Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this new series on the idea of balance. As I mentioned last week, we're going to be exploring it from the idea of how we can cultivate it, how we can maintain it, and how we can leverage it to allow us to have a measure of freedom from reactivity and bring clarity to our present moment, especially in these times. I think it will be very useful. Balance is just a step in our process of becoming. As we talked about last week, we're all just events, morphing from one event to the next, just at different speeds and for different durations. And the idea here is that we may be able to cultivate some agency over that process, and our choices can determine which event we show up as in this time, the next time, or the time after that. But what is it? A simple definition that I prefer is an even-mindedness, a sense of stability and calm amidst the changing nature of life. And I know that sounds a bit flowery, so I think realistically what it's saying is that it's simply about control, what we can control and what we can't control. When things are out of balance, like now with the fires, the global pandemic, and the election right around the corner, we're overwhelmed with what we can't control. So balance allows us to focus on what we can control, which is, as I've said many times before, simply two things: our attitudes and our actions. So today we're going to focus on our attitude, and I think that will lead to the right action. So a definition in the broader sense of balance has been given by many great mindfulness teachers, including Sharon Salzberg, John Kabat-Zinn, and Jack Kornfield. They call it equanimity. So I don't think there's much point in me redefining it. So let me describe some of the ways they talk about it, because I think it really sums it up beautifully. A non-judging attitude, which consists in assuming the stance of an impartial witness to one's own experience. It involves suspending judgment and simply watching whatever comes up, including observing one's automatic judgments of like, dislike, and don't care, without judging the judging. It involves recognizing one's thoughts as just thoughts, without pursuing them any further. It's also a willingness to see things as they are, not merely a tolerance, but rather an active, non-judgmental embracing of experience in the here and now, with undefended exposure to thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations as they are directly experienced. So it really does include all realms: your thoughts, your feelings, and your body. And it's not just a flat place where we're withdrawn from or untouched by the joys and sorrows of our experience. It's the ability to sit in the fire of experience and be with it with a steadiness, an open-heartedness, an intimate, hearted relationship with the joys and sorrows. It can seem like dispassion, disconnection, or apathy, but true balance is a deeply connected state of mind. One can be passionate, yet recognize the truths as they are. Balance does not make us inactive. We can still engage in actions for justice, but do it from a mind of balance and wisdom. We've all had access to it many times in our lives, and so we know that it can be cultivated through noticing that things change, understanding that this can pass. I know I've mentioned numerous times one of the big sort of epiphanies for me was when I had to drive an hour every day each way to Irvine from Venice, because I had to take a job there, and I was working with an advertising agency that was working on a very big social media campaign for a company I really did not have great feelings for, called Taco Bell. You may have heard of it. I'd never eaten a Taco Bell, never been in a Taco Bell, won't be going anytime soon. but it was a job. And so I really had to take it. And I remember when I moved to Los Angeles from New York, I made myself a promise that I would not drive long distances to work. Certainly the history of my accident and just the idea of spending long hours on a freeway did not thrill me in any way. But I really had no choice. I had to take this job. So I began listening to Zen Mind and Beginner's Mind by Shamu Suzuki, and it helped me tremendously to understand that this was an event and it would pass and it would change, and that if I remained calm and I did a good job and I was clear about my intention, then I could know that I would get another job that would be a lot closer. And so I did. I listened to that book. I drove it for 6 months there and back. But I always kept my eye out for an opportunity. And sure enough, at the end of 6 months, I found a job on Olympic Boulevard, 10 minutes from my house. But just that understanding that I was going to be in this state, in this drive, in this job for the next however long it would be. I didn't know exactly how long. But that my goal and my intention was to do it well and then move on to the next event was what carried me through. But a more recent example is my husband was diagnosed with macular degeneration a number of years ago, and it didn't really seem to affect him. But as an artist, the whole concept of having this disease that would affect his eyesight was just crippling. And slowly but surely over time, it's become more present in his vision, and he's really had to deal with it. And there's actually no cure. So he initially was quite angry, very sad, and then slowly but surely he understood the reality of the situation. He accepted this present moment and understood what was coming, and then he took control of it. And so we went to the best doctors. He changed his diet. He began taking supplements, and he also read that walking was a very beneficial activity. And so 4 months ago, he said, I'm going to go for a walk every day, a 30-minute walk, just around the neighborhood. And he has not missed one day in 4 months, and I think he will continue. And what's funny is I don't think it's actually helped the macular degeneration, but it has done wonders for his health, his state of mind, and his general disposition. So the idea is we can take control of the things we can control, and we can move forward for the next event in a very positive light. So especially now during the pandemic, knowing that things will change, we don't know when, it is an event that is changing and morphing into the next event. There will be a vaccine. There will be some sense of immunity, just the way it happened with the 1918 pandemic and other pandemics. This will come to an end. And then just being able to look at somebody's smile without a mask on, just be able to hug somebody. My daughter arrived in Los Angeles a week ago. I hadn't seen her in 8 months. She hadn't been here. She moved away 8 years ago. And the fact that I couldn't hug her, she's in quarantine for 15 days, was so difficult. But again, I had to just tell myself, this is the times we are living in. She can't come in the house. I can't hug her and kiss her. But we can drop off food and make her feel like she's loved. And I can stay 6 feet from her and sit in the garden. And I might be able to walk on the beach with her with masks on. So we just try and do what we can do. And know that there will be a time where I'll be able to give her that hug and she can come in the house. So I'm excited for those times. So what are some of the benefits of balance? Well, it's about refining your attention and recognizing how you feel. Is it fear or sadness or just discomfort or frustration? And then choosing how much you wish to let that affect you. That's really where there's the recognizing, and then how much do we let it in? How much do we hold on? How much do we cling to it and let it affect us? Can it ruin this minute, this hour, this day? Or can it be much more impactful in that way? So it's that idea that we can choose once we're aware of what we're feeling. And then inhabit that feeling. Open up the space before it. So When you react, it's not from that automatic place of resistance or clinging, but understand it and see it from a space like, oh, that's what that is. I know how to react to that. I know how to handle that. And be able to respond in a more mindful and calm and balanced way. But I think most importantly, it's about exercising a measure of control. When we're in a reactive state, it's because we already feel like things are out of control. We're anxious for some future event or upset about something from the past, and we may feel there's nothing we can do. So bringing awareness and acknowledgement and acceptance helps us to see clearly how we can change ourselves and then eventually the situation. So the obstacles to balance are the desire to cling to what's pleasurable and to push away things that are unpleasant. And so if you get stuck in one of those mindsets, then it's very difficult to understand and just accept the present moment, which leads to that next obstacle, not accepting the present moment. We're in a pandemic, right? We have to understand we can't control that. We can control our behavior. We can wear a mask. We can protect ourselves and protect others. That's what we can do. That's the control that we have. And distraction, that's another one. We can, be having alcohol every night or eating food all the time or watching movies all the time and just not confront anything at all, which is not productive. But there's a balance. So yes, we should know what's going on, but we don't have to maybe torture ourselves being on Facebook all day long or Twitter all day long or watching the news all day long. We don't have to do that to ourselves. So if we can allow ourselves to just say, oh, again, like there's this much reactivity and the rest I can leave, I can let go. That's where balance comes in. So we've talked about some of the tools for cultivating balance before, but I'll just go over them again because we can't really say them enough. So the first one is just naming and labeling how you're feeling. And I would recommend, rather than saying, I am sad, or I am angry, or I am upset, you can say, oh, that's anger, that's fear, that's frustration. And that immediately just gives you a sense of space between how you self-identify and what you're going through. So right away, you can create that gap and a bit of a distance to bring some balance. There's also the tools we talked about before, the pause practice, where you just take 3 breaths, just 1, 2, 3. I'm calmer already. There's stop, where we do stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. Takes a little bit longer than 3 breaths because you really need to go through those steps. And then there's the more in-depth one, which I call real, which is recognize how you're feeling, explore it, see where you feel it. Do you feel it in your stomach, in your chest, in your shoulders? Explore it. Then acknowledge it. That's just what I'm feeling. That's a normal reaction. And then bring some loving kindness to it. That loving kindness and compassion is so important once we recognize. Then there's that just understanding that even if it's discomfort we're feeling right now, that this too will pass. Everything changes. Everything is an event. We are events. It will change. And that we can have some agency over how that changes. There's wise distraction. So as I said, if you're going to stay on Facebook all day long, that is distraction, but not wise distraction. Wise distraction may be, no, I'll just cook a delicious dinner right now. Or what I totally recommend is seeing if you can help somebody with something. Give somebody a little bit of your time and advice or love. Just getting outside of yourself for a few minutes, really beneficial, because not only do you feel the gratitude that they have for you, but you're just feeling better because you were able to give. So that's a really beneficial tool. Then there's self-compassion. Just Maybe give yourself a hug or put your hand on your heart. Simple, simple things. We tend to be quite judgmental about ourselves, and we can just let that judgment go and bring a little loving kindness to ourselves. Very, very helpful. And last but not least, by any means, is any kind of physical exercise. You know, I'm a big yoga fan, and we are constantly being asked to go into uncomfortable positions and hold them for a long period of time, which seems like a long period of time, maybe 30 seconds. But as I sit there in that pose, I think to myself, I know this pose will be morphing into another pose. And how can I find calmness and stillness in this pose? So yoga has been a huge benefit to me in terms of understanding balance. So there's a wonderful story that I want to repeat here. It's from the Cherokee Nation, where a grandfather is talking to a grandson. And he says this story. "A fight is going on inside me," he said to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One wolf represents anger and envy, greed, self-pity, sorrow, regret, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, selfishness, and arrogance. The other wolf stands for joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, justice, fairness, empathy, generosity, true compassion, gratitude, and deep vision. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other human as well." The grandson paused in deep reflection because of what his grandfather had just said, and then he finally cried out, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" And the elder Cherokee replied, "The wolf that you feed." I think that sums up very nicely our ability to cultivate balance. So what we learn about balance is from being out of balance and knowing that our life is just a series of moments. Of every moment, we have the ability to choose which wolf we feed, which story we tell ourselves, what to cultivate and what to let go of, and recognize that it is what we have control over that we can nurture, because that is what will bring balance and awareness and wisdom. And so as I leave you every time with a quote, here's one of my favorite from James Baldwin. He says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." So I'd like to ask you in the coming week to think about, maybe ask yourself, what do I notice pulls me away from my balance or steadiness? And then what tools do I or will I use to cultivate that balance in these times? And let's talk about it next time. That would be great. So thank you so much. Let's meditate.